Alright, so today I wanted to take a little bit of time to look through a few of the things you guys deem as unpopular opinions or what you believe is unpopular, and this time we pulled from the Discord. This is going to be a little different than the first actual unpopular opinions because I just sort of chose some and didn't do a community vote. I'm going to save that for the end of the season, which will be in about a month from now. So for now, this is sort of a community video unpopular opinions hybrid. As always, if you do watch these videos somewhat regularly, I'd really appreciate it if you sub to the channel, as it helps me out now more than ever. Now let's not waste any more time and get right into it. Alright, really quick before we begin, there will be an update making its way into the game tomorrow. It isn't a big one, it's just a few bug fixes, and luckily one of those bugs that are being fixed involves Tiandi's kick. The kick is being fixed and will return to normal tomorrow. I'm pretty happy about this as I've been having a lot of fun with Tiandi recently. So yeah, I wanted to let you all know about that really fast. Now to start things off, we've got Memes Are Fat 002, and they say, this game is fine if it doesn't get any more core gameplay changes. Yeah, so I think the game is in a pretty good spot, at least compared to how it was when it released. It is in a better state, leaps and bounds I'd say, as a lot of the core issues have been ironed out and we can actually, play the game without it crashing or booting everyone out of the game or anything like that. And if you started playing this game at or a little before release, during year one or in the beta, you can tell firsthand. Now, I feel like when I say that, I also have to say that just because the game is in a better state now, that doesn't mean the game is more fun now to everyone, as fun is subjective. It changes from person to person, and you could have liked For Honor in year one, or you could have found For Honor to be the most fun after Marching Fire released, or you could have found For Honor to be the most fun just before the core combat update made its way into the game. For me personally, it's sort of difficult to pinpoint when For Honor was at its most enjoyable to me, just because I've been playing, since beta, and my enjoyment of the game hasn't been linear. There's been peaks and valleys depending on not only what's been going on in the game or, surrounding the game, but also what's been going on in my life, which is the case for everyone, of course, but I really need to think about that. Anyways, if no other huge gameplay changes were to come to For Honor, let's say the patch tomorrow was the last update and the next season that starts in early December gets scrapped and never makes its way into the game, then yeah, I'd say the game is fine. However, I would still like to see changes to some of the systems in the game. I'd like to see changes to some defensive options, reflex guard, how long you can hold revenge, or even reworking the renown and a few more feats. Something like that deserves its own write-up or own video, but we've got a lot of heroes in this game now. The class system means less now than ever before, especially since we've got heroes that cover a lot of bases. And now that there are 27 going on 28 heroes next month, I'd be very, very happy to see the entire system looked at. I think, like a lot of other things that have changed in For Honor over the past few years, the renown system is another relic of the past. The whole class-based renown system is a relic of the past, and some would argue whether or not it ever really mattered. Again, feats and renown deserve their own video, but it's pretty obvious if you've been playing the game how much feats and which feats impact, a game much more than others, or how quickly the heavy class can earn renown and their feats versus assassins, just due to how the game is played at this point. Yes, the game would be fine if there were no more changes in a sense, but I do think that there should be more changes to the core gameplay, one of those being feats and renown. Now, nothing is set in stone at this moment, but I believe a little while back, UB Insulin, one of the game's community managers, mentioned that the renown system is something that he brought to the team's attention, and that the team is aware that the current system makes it harder for assassins, so let's keep our fingers crossed for some news on that someday. Next up, Nimda Possum Slayer says, unpopular opinion, a defensive meta was better. So I'm assuming you mean the game before the CCU. You're not the first person to say this. You're certainly not the last person that's going to say this. I've been seeing this statement more and more as time goes on. Generally, anytime something, happens to weaken a defensive option, like when charged heavy option selects were dealt with, or when a hero gets sped up. I'll see, people say the same thing. But of course, after the CCU was released, the floodgate was opened. As I said, just before the CCU dropped, some people are really going to enjoy this newer style of play, others will not. I know there are plenty of people that loved this game before. They loved being able to parry lights from all directions without second thought, or they loved being able to deflect every light that was thrown their way, or just enjoyed staring at their opponents until they moved to perform some defensive action and go on from there. You all already know my stance on this, so I don't need to go too deep into it, but I think the game is better now. There are some things I personally miss from before, but as a whole, things are better. I think that some people choose to forget how strong defense was and how fights could actually end up lasting for way too long, with no one really being able to open if they were using certain heroes, especially if a feat like Second Wind was involved that would make fights last forever. The high damage numbers also didn't do too much to encourage aggression either, since throwing a light attack could cost you about half of your health, and if you didn't have, healing feats, then you were kind of screwed. And don't even get me started on things before Season 5. I can see where people are coming from, however. It feels good to be able to react to everything. It feels good to be able to deflect 4 attacks in a row and let your opponent know that they can't touch you. But that sort of gameplay wasn't good for Honor, and before I go into more, I've got a whole video on that topic, so I'll leave it there or we'll be here for a while. But again, I have to disagree with you, Nimda. Next up, Please Stand By says Shugoki and Highlander are the only 2 unbalanced heroes. Everyone else is relatively easy and fun to fight. Those 2 are unfun to fight and need nerfs. So I've been seeing these 2 heroes brought up a lot recently. Highlander because of the way his lights look now, and Shugoki as people are starting to voice their thoughts on his armor and mix-up. Now, I would also like to see both of these heroes worked on as well, because neither of them are perfect, but I won't say that I want them to just be nerfed outright. I also don't think that every hero should be easy to fight against, right? It shouldn't be easy to deal with everything your opponent throws at you. However, you don't want opponents to be unfun to fight against or overwhelmingly frustrating either. Anyway, Shugoki and Highlander have issues of their own, especially when it comes to dealing with opponents who just don't want to deal with their game. They just don't want to deal with the Highlander kick grab mix or Shugoki's unblockable hug mix. Maybe Highlander is facing an opponent that, he rolls over, or ends up fighting someone who can easily roll over him, or he's dealing with someone that just rolls all the time. Maybe Shugoki is facing a bash, or he's dealing with someone who just rolls away all the time. I'm not trying to say that heroes shouldn't have ways to be dealt with, but things aren't as binary as some people are making them out to be, especially with these heroes. Rather than saying we need to nerf these heroes outright because of this, we need to push UB to actively work on these heroes and address all of their flaws and the frustrations that players have with them. Because we all know what happens when you just nerf a hero and compensate them in no other way. Next up, Lally says, after COVID ends, I think it's about time we ask for Marching Fire 2. Whoa. I don't mean more Wulin, but another revolutionary update. Marching Fire added Breach and Arcade, 4 new characters, maps, armor sets, and a graphics update. Getting another major update like this after a few hero changes are done needs to happen. Most of you already admitted it, some of you don't want to, but we're all being torn away from For Honor, even if we really don't want to be. And when hero changes are done, that won't fix our lack of content. So I feel Marching Fire 2 can revive this game for a little while longer. Okay, so I've talked about the idea of a second game or For Honor 2 a few times over these past few years with this game, because I believe that people really like the idea of For Honor, but for whatever reason won't play the game. We've also talked about a sizable update, but something as big as a Marching Fire 2 or an update that brought that much content in one season, one chunk, would need to be amazing to get the same pop that another game would. Now, I doubt that anything like a Marching Fire 2 would happen again, although it would be cool, because on paper, a whole new faction, an entirely new larger scale game mode, and another PvE mode on top of graphical improvements and armors and whatnot is nothing to scoff at. Especially when you look at the quality of it all. It wasn't perfect, but if you step back and really look at it all, you know, from the work that goes into the heroes and the breach maps alone, it's pretty impressive. And I will admit, it would have been pretty damn cool if we went into the next generation with another large update. But at what cost, you know? I think it would be alright if they skipped Warmonger, you know, kept the seasonal updates and title updates, and then of course rolled out the CCU. But they would need to let us know that they were working on expansion early on, like at the end of year 3, so that we're not all in the dark like before. Because it may have worked in year 2, but in year 4, if you were trying to do the same thing, especially with everything going on now, I think there would be even more dead game comments than ever, and I think that people would, you know, start leaving the game. The faction that they decide to release would also be really important. As we all know, the Wulin aren't the most popular faction in the game, they're the least popular, and from my understanding they don't sell as much stuff in terms of stuff in the shops that you can buy with steel as other factions do, which is obviously pretty important, as with any live service game, the more stuff you buy and want to buy with in-game currency or premium currency, the better, as you're more likely to bust out your wallet. Now, of course, the Wulin have less heroes, but even by the other metrics and info that we have or have seen through the seasonal matrices and whatnot, we know that the Wulin as a whole are the least popular, and the Marching Fire update didn't thrust the game to new heights or anything like that. And that sucks to say, because I believe the Wulin are extremely stylish and look good doing just about everything they do. And with me saying that again, I think that the update would have been more popular had UB went with another faction, although I'm not really sure which faction they could have created that would have been as popular as the Knights, Vikings, and Samurai. You know, you're covering a lot of bases there. That is, if they decided to make an entirely new faction in the first place. They could have did what they did in year 3 and just make a hero for each faction and then add on another one to probably the Knights. As for a game mode, I'm really not sure what they could add to try and get people really excited. A castle siege mode was highly requested, and we got it, just not in large scale. The two things I see proposed most nowadays are a free-for-all mode, and then of course a 6v6 or an 8v8 or a 12v12 or something like that. And there's no doubt that a huge update would be really appreciated, and it'd be a lot of content, but I would still rather receive another game. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. The Halloween event is coming to a close pretty soon, and now that we're in November, we should be receiving a November roadmap and see what's going to hold us over until next month when the new hero arrives. We're also 6 days away from the new Xbox Series X and S release, and 8 days away from the PS5 release, and I'm really hoping I can get my hands on at least one of them, as I missed the pre-orders for both. As always, I do want to know what you guys think, so be sure to talk to me down in the comments about anything we talk about in this video. And as always, if you like the video, feel free to leave a like and sub if you're new, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.